Welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in Guyana over the past week or so. And as is the norm, we always have a packed agenda of issues to discuss. I want to welcome our viewers who are joining us on television from region number 5, West Coast, Berbice. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. To our viewers on television again who are joining us from across the Berbice River, along the coast of the Berbice River, New Amsterdam, and the Quarantine Coast all the way to Siparuta and Oriala of the Quarantine River. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. To our viewers and listeners who are joining us from Freedom Radio, Rob Street, Georgetown, welcome. And last but not least, to the thousands of you who are joining us on Facebook Live from across the length and breadth of Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, Asia, and further afield. I saw someone who has joined us from Afghanistan. When I tell people that people are looking at this program from New Zealand, from Australia, and now I see persons from Afghanistan joining this program. So we are spreading our wings wide and far, and that's good. I'm happy because it shows that the program is informative, it shows that the program is sought after, it shows that the content of the program is interesting. And that is why I continue to appeal to you to share the program, share the live so that everyone on your page, on your account, on your wall can also view this program. The wider it is shared, the greater the audience capture, and that is what we want. We want the widest possible audience to tune in to this program. And that is why I continue to appeal to you to share the program wide and far so that all your friends and all your followers can join, and you can share it in the groups that you are in. Many of you are in groups that have thousands of people. Many of you are in WhatsApp chats that have hundreds of people. Share it in all those groups so that more and more people can join in our discussion. I also ask, I don't want to forget this, I also encourage you to use the comment section to voice your views. I always want this program to be interactive. I want this program to be a learning experience. So I want to learn from you, and hopefully you are able to learn from me. But it is important that we exchange views. And that is why, as I normally would say to you, if I don't get to look at your comments while I am on the program, I look at it afterwards, and in the follow-up program I try to respond. I know that there have been a widespread request for the program to be extended to 1.5 hours. Well, we are looking at that. It's not easy to sit for 1 hour and speak non-stop, but the public demand seem to want the program to be extended. I'm hoping also that I will add a call-in dimension to the program at some point in time. But let's continue in the mold in which we are accustomed. So in Guyana, we have the Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo that is on the way. It commenced this morning. I didn't get an opportunity to attend as I was overseas, and I came into the country this afternoon. But from all indications, it has been a massive opening. Over 4,000 persons are in attendance. 4,000 persons are in attendance, most of whom are from outside of Guyana. And that's the kind of pull that Guyana has as a destination. This conference, by far, is now the largest conference of its type, certainly in the Caribbean, and possibly in the entire Latin America and South America, Central America and South America. It is possibly the largest conference of its type in this hemisphere, and it only started a few years ago. That is the pull that Guyana now has. That is the attraction that Guyana now enjoys with its neighbors and in this hemisphere. So ignore the naysayers. They are only seeing negatives. They are only seeing what is bad. And I've said to them, as members of the opposition, there is nothing wrong with acknowledging progress and making constructive criticisms and advancing constructive policies and agendas of your own. But when the entire world is seeing positives and are participating in activities in Guyana by the thousands, and Guyana continues to be one of the most attractive investment destinations in this region, and the world recognizes that, and investors are coming from different parts of the globe to invest here, as far as the Middle East. But Guyanese politicians on the opposite side continue to preach doom and gloom. They continue to be pessimists of the worst type. As I said, you can recognize a positive. You can acknowledge progress. It would help your credibility. It would enhance your leadership capabilities. It would give your leadership authenticity and mettle, rather than be duplicitous and just preach gloom and doom. But it's a matter for the politicians, and if they choose the path that they have clearly chosen, who am I to try to influence them? When you hear them speak, they know the whole world. They know everything. You can't tell them anything. So let them travel the road that they have chosen to travel, and they will go to the destination that that road takes them. So we have a workshop. First of all, let me say that the plea bargaining bill, or the plea bargaining law, the proper name for it is the Criminal Procedure Plea Discussion, Plea Agreement, and Plea Assistant Agreement Act of 2024, was brought into force last month on the 12th of January by an order signed by yours truly. Now that act is in force, so persons can now utilize the provisions of this act. This is a very important legislative intervention. It allows, first of all, it has been widely used with great success in the United States of America in particular. 95% of criminal cases, both at the level of the state and at the federal level, are concluded by the utilization of plea bargaining. You hear me? 95% of criminal cases are concluded both at the state level and the federal level by the utilization of the plea bargaining process. Only 5% of cases in the United States go to trial. Only 5%. England, the statistics are not so impressive, but it is widely used. The entire Caribbean now has this as part of their process. The conference that I just attended in Barbados dealt at length with the use of plea bargaining and its importance in the criminal justice system. The CCJ has called upon every country in the Caribbean to implement plea bargaining legislation across the region. We have done so, and we are now in the process of bringing the law into force. It came into force on January the 12th. That's last month. I am advised that the DPP has already begun to use the process. But it is important that we get the public buy-in. And that is why in the plea bargaining legislation, there is a section that mandates both the judge or the magistrate, as the case may be, to inform a defendant or an accused person when he or she first appears that he or she has a right to enter into plea discussions with the prosecutor. I'll read the section. Upon the first appearance of an accused person before a court, whether the accused is represented by an attorney at law or not, the court shall advise the accused person of his or her right to enter into a plea discussion with the prosecutor. So we are making it now as a mandatory preliminary process for the court to inform the accused or the defendant of the existence of this procedure. Recall that we had this law before, but it never was successfully used. It was hardly used. We had it, and there were some problems with it. That's why we implemented a modern version of the law, and we repealed that old one. And this one now has all the facilities that the modern form of the legislation has, which includes the court informing the accused of his or her option to plea bargaining. So this workshop, I have arranged a workshop that will begin on Thursday and will continue on to Friday at Cara Lodge. And this workshop will bring together for training the state prosecutors in the DPP office and the special prosecutors that have joined the prosecutorial arm of the state, senior police investigating ranks, and the practicing bar of Guyana, both the Berbice bar and the Georgetown bar. So all these important players will be brought together, and the consultant who drafted this law for us will deliver a lecture on the workings of the bill, of the law. And this is done to bring public awareness and to underscore the importance of this piece of legislation. Also, part of that training session will include the Abolition of Preliminary Inquiries Act. Recall that last year also we abolished preliminary inquiries, and we have made paper committal a permanent part of our criminal justice system. The second day, the Friday of this training session, will be dedicated towards going through that piece of legislation with the attendees. And again, the same consultant who drafted that law will be delivering the will be holding the workshop and will be administering will supervise the discussion. That latter law, that is the abolition of preliminary inquiry law and the paper committal law, has not yet been brought into force, but will be brought into force very shortly. I was asked not to bring it into force because the judiciary needs to make appropriate adjustments to the work schedule of the judiciary. Because remember, from the moment that act comes into force, there would be a huge transferal of criminal cases from the magistracy over to the High Court for trial, because you wouldn't have preliminary inquiries anymore. By reading papers, that's why it's called paper committal, by reading the statements and making submissions based upon the statements, the lawyers, defense lawyers, prosecutors, and the magistrate will determine whether the case should be committed to the High Court or not. And once it is determined that the case should be committed to the High Court, then it's committed. There's no 3 or 4 years spent in doing a preliminary inquiry anymore. In a matter of weeks, that case will be committed to the High Court, or it will be dismissed, or discharged is the proper word. So, as I said, there will be a huge transferal of caseload from the magistrates' court over to the High Court. And the judiciary, rightfully so, has asked for some time to put the mechanism in place to allow for a smooth operationalization of the Act. And I am awaiting their confirmation of their state of readiness before we implement that law. Friday, I'll be joining a team from the judiciary to declare open the Mabaruma Magistrates Court. You will recall only 2 months ago, we traveled to Port Kaituma in Region 1, where we declared open a Port Kaituma Magistrates Court, state-of-the-art Magistrates Court, air-conditioned, automatic recording system, systems in place for them to be Zoom hearings, elevator, living quarters for the magistrates and the staff, facilities for domestic violence victims, facilities for child abuse victims, council room for council to hold conferences with their clients. All of these are the amenities now that form part and parcel of the magistrates' court. And I've said publicly that when you look at these courts, though they are located in the dense Amazon forest, they can compare with courts anywhere in the urban centers of the Caribbean. That's the quality of work that goes into these courts, and the magnificence of the structures and the variety of facilities that these courts now possess. Mabaruma Magistrates Court is going to be no different. So we will be declaring open the Magistrates Court at Mabaruma on Friday, and on Saturday I will be holding a public session on restorative justice for the Mabaruma sub-district. And hopefully we will get people also from Aruca and Port Kaituma as well. But the central concentration will be at Mabaruma, where we will do a session on restorative justice. As I said, restorative justice is now formally part of the legal system of our country. So I want to I wanted to get those issues out of the way so that I can proceed to deal with the political component of the program. So a lot of people have asked me to respond to David Hines' outrageous, racist outbursts in which he vilified and insulted Afro-Guyanese. And I saw the expression of shock and the public outpouring of regret. And I'm wondering why. For me, David Hines has done exactly what I know David Hines will do. David Hines has done exactly what David Hines is capable of doing. David Hines has done exactly what is his inclination. 20 or more years ago, I formed the opinion that David Hines is racist, David Hines is extreme, he's an extremist, and David Hines operates on the fringes of civilized society. 2 decades now I formed that opinion, having sat with David Hines on television programs. I sense his restraint in those programs. I sense his restraint on many occasions. But you cannot restrain your natural instincts for too long. And what you heard David Hines say, and what you heard he advocated, is what is in his mind, is what his brain is programmed to say. And the fact that he has not expressed any remorse or regret over it confirms my conclusion. Why he must express regret and why he must express remorse when that is who he is, and that is what he's inclined characteristically to say. That is his intuition, that is his instincts. So I am not surprised. I have put David Hines, Rickford Burke, Mark Benchcop, Kedaki somebody, Lincoln Lewis, and Tacoma Ogonseye, they're all in the same category. And as the election gets closer, and it becomes more and more apparent that the PPP will be returned to government, these outbursts, outrageous as they are going to increase. Because this is a bunch that knows this is what they are programmed to say. This is how they are programmed to behave. So while I have to condemn what David Hines has said, as racism is a constitutional wrong in our country, I am not surprised that he has said that. And my condemning him saying so will not change anything. David Hines will very well repeat it next week when the dust is settled a little. And if they are prepared to say that for the world to hear, could you imagine what they say privately Do you imagine what they say to Afro-Guyanese in the bottom houses and in the villages? I have already analyzed that 20 years ago. And that is why I know that Guyanese, by and large, majority of them, are intelligent and they are not prone in the directions that these people would like to take them. Because I have an idea, I always knew what they are prepared to say publicly, they are saying 100 times worse when they go to the marketplaces and when they have private discussions and when they go to the dances and when they go to the wake houses and when they go to the village meetings. You could imagine the level of conversation there. So nobody should be surprised. The quicker we understand that these people are to be ostracized and they should not be taken seriously. No matter who call themselves WPA, you don't bother with that. The WPA is dead a long time ago. 5 of them are members of the WPA. That is it. And Walter Rodney, well, he must have turned so many times in his grave that Walter can't turn anymore. This is an utter disgrace to Walter Rodney's legacy. This bunch of extremists, racists. And the thing is that they have nothing to offer to anybody. Nothing. They have never offered anybody anything, and they cannot afford to offer anybody anything. They can hardly afford to live, based on what I'm seeing. And they want to lecture to Afro-Guyanese on how they should conduct their lives. Not only their politics, they want to lecture to Afro-Guyanese how they must live their lives. Which one of them you know living a life worthy of emulation? Which one of them? I said to somebody today, and let me repeat it for the benefit of this program. Forget when I'm in government. When I was in the opposition, from 2015 to 2020, I did more using my own personal funds for the people of Buxton than David Hines did from 2015 to 2020, though his party was in government. Let me repeat that. In opposition, I did more. Forget the PPP. I, Anil Nandlall, did more for the people of Buxton than David Hines did. For that same period, although his party was in government. And I am not worried that I can be contradicted, because I can list the events that I sponsored and how many people and children benefited. When I used to distribute 1,000 kites in Buxton, the PNC leader, President David Granger, used to do 300 at the gas station. I used to go into Buxton, into the heart of Buxton, and he used to stop at the gas station with 300 and 400 children. And I used to distribute 1,000 kites when we were in the opposition. Have you ever seen David Hines ever held a party for children, something for old people? You ever see him hand over a hamper anywhere? I don't know what these guys think. And they want to corral Afro-Guyanese like animals into a political tent. Africans have perhaps the greatest history of struggle for freedom in this world, over and above every other ethnic group. They fought the most oppressive, draconian, and inhumane system of subjugation and servitude, the most cruel system known to man. That is the history of Africans. And these guys are pretending to lead Africans and are taking away the freedom from the very Africans to support a political party of their choice. These are leaders. Are these leaders? Or these are people who want to subject Africans to greater servitude, to another system of servitude? The very rights and freedoms they want to take away from those people. Their freedom to support another political party. Because they believe that they are the cattle masters, they are the vaqueros, they must herd them into tents and ensure that they are there. The people must not exercise their minds. They must not free their minds from the mental slavery that they wish to subject them to. And they are masquerading as leaders. But as I said a few minutes ago, why people are surprised? That is their nature. What you heard from David Hines, that is what David Hines is. And it will only get worse. As they get older, they get more senile. As they get older, they will become more loose. The restraint will recede. And the true nature will come forward more and more. So you have much more to see. That is why you, looking on, have to put them in a particular category in your mind. And say, look, these people must not cause me any stress. They're not worth it. They will never be part of mainstream society. They can never be part of a decision-making process that will impact the public. Certainly not the public good. If by some strange way they ever get into government, well then we have a problem. We have a problem. And that is why it is the duty of every one of you to ensure that that doesn't happen. That is if you want a future for Guyana and Guyanese. And that brings me to the Mocha squatters case. So I spoke at length on the last program about that case, and I outlined to you how the politicians in the APNU and AFC misled, abused, manipulated, and then discarded those people. They used them for all the public pappy shows. They told them, go to court. You have good cases. Go and seek compensation from the government. And as I said to you, not one of them represented those people. Not one of them represented those people. I named 6 of them who are sitting in the parliament as lawyers. Roysdale Ford, Amanza Desir, Kemraj Ramjatan, Geeta Chandan, I can't remember, the other guy who was a minister of business from Essequibo. I can't remember his name. 5 of them are lawyers in the parliament. None of them are paid for those people. Flubes, Nimes Flubes, the MP from that area, swore an affidavit and presented it to the court. The same foolishness that they say publicly is what she said in the affidavit. And the Chief Justice was very firm in rejecting the affidavit as irrelevant and completely without credibility. The allegations, the same madness that they say on TV, the same madness that they say in the parliament, they tried to say that, she tried to say that in the affidavit. And the Chief Justice wasted no time in deeming the affidavit irrelevant and incredulous and struck it off. So I spoke about that at length last week. After that, Norton, leader of the opposition, Aubrey Norton, held a press conference. And this is why you cannot take these people seriously. Not only did they abandon the people, they didn't go to court with them. They never followed the case. They never followed the case. They moved on to something else. Those people were, for all intent and purposes, left on their own. They never followed up the case, so they didn't know what was going on. There was not a scintilla of case established. And the judge went through, to her credit, in great details, the evidence presented. And nothing was incapable, either in law or evidentially, to establish a case of any type. And the matter was thrown out. Now, a wise leader, a sensible leader, would try to, before he speaks publicly on the matter, would try to get an understanding of the case and then try to find a position that sounds reasonable. Having recognized that they send the people to the slaughterhouse, one would have thought that a prudent leader would try to do some damage control, backpedal a little, not necessarily conceding everything, but at least say, you can say, no, they would never say that they made an error. They wouldn't say that. But there is something else that he could have said to make the situation a little more palatable. You know what the man's going to say? The man said that I have no remorse for advising the people the way that he did. I'm looking at a Times newspaper article. The opposition leader brazenly declared that he has no remorse for misleading the Mocha Arcadia squatters. Norton also encouraged the beleaguered residents that the beleaguered residents should only accept foreign assistance from the government on the condition that they be given back the lands, despite the court ruling that the lands which they belong to the state. The land which they occupy belong to the state. Norton is again urging the people to hold out their challenge to the government. This guy is this man for real? This man is telling the people to maintain their position. A court of law has ruled. None of them said that they will appeal, and if they appeal, it's millions of dollars more in costs. The government, as you heard, is prepared to engage them. Not just saying you hold out for the same land. How can you take this man seriously? PNC supporters, are you not seeing sensible ones? Are you not seeing what this man is doing? Are you still supporting this kind of leadership? Are you still taking political guidance from these people who are sending you to the slaughterhouse? Norton said, I am extremely happy that we advise them to seek adequate compensation. As far as we are concerned, we give good advice to them, Norton declared. Is this man saying he gave good advice to the people? As far as he's concerned, he gave good advice. He is home in Plaisance, by his house. He has a driver and a Prado Land Cruiser that the government is paying for him. He gets $1 million per month as leader of the opposition. These people who he advised are now homeless. And he's proud that he has advised them the way that he has done. Norton concludes, his story concludes by saying, I am saying to the people, engage him. talking about the president, because the president said, and that was the government's position all the time, that we are prepared to engage them. They are guidees. We didn't go to court. The government never took them to court. They took the government to court. The government has a duty to defend itself. We said to the court that we are prepared to offer them, to extend the offer which they rejected. We said that to the court. So what the president said was always our position. But listen to Norton. I am saying to the people, engage him, engage the president, but engage him on the condition that he's giving you back those lands, regularizing it and giving you the assistance to develop it. He wants back the same land, the highway is there now. And he's telling the people, go and live on the road. Tell the president you want the highway. That is what he's saying. Go to the president, tell him you want back the land, the very land. The highway runs through the land. So he wants the people now to go and live on the highway. And you are listening to, you are being led by a political leader of this intellect, of this caliber, of this arrogance. All he had to say, that he will lead a delegation to go and meet with the government to get these people properly located and accommodated. He could have said that. I don't know. You have to cast your ballot later this year. If that is what you want to lead you, if that is the type of political leadership you want, well then I guess you get what you deserve. You will get what you deserve. And that is why I have very little patience with people who want to come and debate me on my page when they come with foolishness like this. I don't have the time nor the energy. I am talking to people who have a mind. I am hoping to relate to people and persuade you once you are capable of persuasion. If you think that Norton is a good leader and you accept this type of leadership that he has given, well then you don't come on my page. Don't waste my time and energy. I can't help you. Norton is the right leader for you. Stay in your own corner. That's the best advice that I can give you. If you think the way that Norton has handled that situation, if you think that David Hines has said the right thing, well then that's the type of leaders that you need. You don't need me. You don't need me to talk to you. So don't contaminate my page with your views, because I'll be deleting them. I have neither the time nor the energy. If you want a proper debate, yes, I'll debate you. But if you think that this is, then there's not the debate. I am pleased to observe that the election fraud trial have begun, and I spoke with the prosecutor, and they have a number of days already fixed for the case to continue. That's a good sign. I'm not going to say anything, but look out for the objections from the defense counsel. Hopefully the press will carry this important trial on an everyday basis, giving it the type of public prominence that it deserves. This is a matter of national importance, and I hope that the press will accord it the type of prominence and importance that it deserves. My attention was drawn to a letter in the newspapers written by elder politician Mr. U.C. Kwayana. Mr. U.C. Kwayana posed some questions to the president and to me. I just came into the country, so I didn't have the opportunity of speaking with the president on the matter. So I don't have his authority to speak on the questions posed to him by Mr. Koyana. But I will address the questions posed to me by Mr. Koyana. But just for background information, Mr. Koyana is now well into his 90s and is perhaps the oldest living politician in the Caribbean, if not this entire hemisphere. Koyana politics dates back to the late 1940s. That's how long he has been around. And is still around and is still able to write for letters for publications in the newspapers. It's an amazing feat. It's an amazing feat to be able to be mentally composed and be able to write letters for publication. And Mr. Koyana writes well. I have always admired his writing style. Not the content, but the style of his writing has always impressed me from since I was very, very young. So he writes well. Mr. Koyana has been living in California for a number of years now, but has been writing profusely on important matters in Guyana, in particular matters touching and concerning politics. And when the blatant and multiple attempts of rigging the elections took place from March the 2nd, 2020 to the end of July 2020, Koyana wrote not a single word of condemnation during that period. Not a word of condemnation. I think it was Mr. Freddie Kissoon who asked repeatedly of him, and Freddie Kissoon was a great admirer of U.C. Koyana. Freddie Kissoon wrote dozens of articles saying that Koyana is one of the greatest human beings he has ever met. And during that period, Freddie Kissoon repeatedly requested of Koyana to write condemning what was happening during that period of electoral attempts at electoral rigging. And Koyana was silent for a long time. For many, many weeks, he was not answering Freddie Kissoon. Until he answered. And you know what he said? He said from that distance, he can't comment because he doesn't know the facts. So, all of you who are listening to me from Canada, from the US, from the United Kingdom, from Europe, from Australia, from New Zealand, from Afghanistan, all of you, or even farther away, those of you who are outside of the continental United States. But you saw for yourself the multiple and many attempts that were made to rig those elections. And you can speak positively because you saw them as if it was in front of you. That's the power of the internet. That is the power of the internet. Koyana can see the same thing in California. Koyana could have seen the same thing in California, but rather than condemned, and this is the duplicity and hypocrisy, and this is where race undermines reason. Rather than condemn what he was seeing and what he knew was happening. Guyana said that from that distance, he can't comment because he's not au fait with the day-to-day happenings, because he's estranged by distance. And these guys want to ask questions of the president and ask questions of me. And how is he, and I'm going to deal with the questions that he asked me, but how is he able to ask those questions from that very distance? He has been in California for over 15 years. So the questions that he's asking me, which I'll deal with just now, relate to matters that took place around the same time that they were attempting to steal elections. But how he was able to follow those events for which he wants answers, but he was not able to follow the events where Lowenfield and Mingo tried to steal elections. And these guys want you to take them seriously, even in his old age, where people should revere him, they should respect him, they should glorify him. He's being hypocritical and duplicitous in his 90s. And I say that with the greatest of respect, because I have respect for age. And the only reason why I will answer the questions that he's asking is because I have respect for his age. So the first question he asked, I have the letter here. He refers to the Commission of Inquiry into the elections. Remember, we appointed a Commission of Inquiry into the 2020 elections fiasco. And that report is out. And the report found exactly what you saw. Multiple attempts at rigging the elections. According to Mr. Koyana, he has never been able to find the terms of reference for the commission. And he asked this question before, and I answered it before, and I'm going to answer it again. He says that he doesn't read the internet a lot, and he doesn't read, but I don't know how to accept or reject that. But he reads what he wants to read. But the terms of reference for this commission was published in the official gazette as is required by the Commission of Inquiries Act. It was published in the official gazette at or around the same time when the commissioners were sworn in. I recall that because it was a legal requirement. So, Mr. Koyana, get someone to search the gazette and you will see the terms of reference being published there. The second issue the second question that he asked is about the unsolved homicide, that is what he calls it. The unsolved homicide committed by police and civilians in the rural territory between Cotton Tree and Plantation Bath. And at least 3 of them very young. He's speaking about the Henry brothers and the other person who was killed. There were 2 Afro-Guyanese youths and there was an Indian person who was killed. So Koyana wants to ask me about what is the status of these cases. He calls them unsolved homicides. And you see, these are the terms that they use, and unless you answer them, they are left on the record. But I'll go back to this just now. I can't remember the name of the Indo-Guyanese boy. Check the name for me, Chris. I'll get the name just now. But the Henry boys, we know them well. So Mr. Koyana is unconcerned that activists from the PNC took to the road and cause mayhem, burn the road, beat and rob people. He's not concerned about that. Burn houses, burn cars. One of them was a lawyer, is a lawyer, who was in that crowd. And you know why? What they were saying? They were saying that the Indo-Guyanese, they call them PPP supporters from Cotton Tree, murdered the Henry brothers. That is what they were spreading. And that is what caused the people to come out on the road. And David Granger went there, and Joseph Harmon went there. And after they met with the people, the chaos, the violence, and the mayhem intensified. I don't know what they told the people. Quayana is not concerned about none of those. But he calls the Henry boys and the other guys killing unsolved mysteries. And he wants to know what is the status of the case. Well, in relation to the Henry boys, these are the two young men who were brutally slain in the backlands, that the PNC supporters were saying that it is people from Cotton Tree who are PPP supporters who killed these two boys. Remember that? And that's what led to the violence outburst on the roads. Well, it so turned out that two persons from Blackbush Polder and one person from West Coast Demerara were charged with the murder, and they confessed to the killings, as far as I heard. And they were all committed to stand trial. So, Mr. Quayana, we have not heard, why don't you use your letter column now to call on the people who are riling up persons and spreading racial hostilities by saying that these two boys were killed by PPP supporters in Cotton Tree. Why don't you write a letter condemning that? Because three persons from disparate locations far away from Cotton Tree were held, charged with the murder, and they were committed to stand trial in the High Court. The preliminary inquiry concluded over 2 years ago. And the Indo-Guyanese from Cotton Tree, who was murdered as a response to these Henry boys killing, and a relative of the Henry boys has been charged for that murder. This boy died as a retaliation of this incident with the two Henry boys. And he was an Indo-Guyanese. And the person charged for his killing and committed to stand trial for his murder was a relative of the Henry boys. Those are the facts, Mr. Quayana. And the preliminary inquiries have all been concluded, and the matters are to be tried by a judge and jury of the High Court. But ever so often, you would hear them invoke this incident to say that these are unsolved murders. These are unsolved murders. And nobody have been yet charged, and nobody have been made to answer. That is what they do. And that is the same thing they keep perpetuating about that 4,000 Afro-Guyanese killed, or I don't know what number. Every time you speak is a different number. I know of people, policemen who were shot by bandits, and they have that as being killed by the PPP. People get shocked, electrical wire shock them, and they are there as extrajudicially killed by the PPP. So, Mr. Quayana, I have answered your questions. I hope I'll see a response from you in which you condemn those who attempted, well, they spread racial strife and they caused a lot of violence and damaged the property. They burned the road. They destroyed public and private properties because of the racial hostility and racial inflammatory information which they were generating on the Facebook page and on the social media. So I would like to see a condemnation from you, Mr. Koyana, of those actions. I have answered your questions out of respect because of your age. I hope that you will reciprocate and write condemning what I just outlined. We have gone past program time. I want to thank you very much for being part of this program over the past hour or so. And I want you to join us next week as we continue our discourse on issues in the news. Take care, stay well, until we meet again next week, Tuesday. Thank you very much. Take care.